Good morning, RosterWatch Nation. It's your friendly neighbor Trash Man, welcoming you to today's edition of As the Rodgers Teases. But before we talk about our most intriguing free agent prospect this offseason, the most dramatic, if nothing else, let's talk about the team that he is probably not going to at this point and what they did in free agency yesterday. The Vikings signed wide receiver Rondell Moore, formerly of the Falcons. Moore visited a few teams in the past week. And the Vikings are who he signed with. Only 24 years old. Seems like he's been around longer than that. In 3 seasons with the Cardinals, 135 receptions for 1,200 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think it's a good fit for the Vikings. As a slot man, Jefferson and Addison on the outside and potentially Moore in the slot. I think this could potentially, depending on who ends up being quarterback there in Minnesota. Well, we know it's probably, they want it to be J.J. McCarthy. But they probably will sign a veteran quarterback to bridge the gap and to help McCarthy come along. But I think Moore would be a nice fit, will be a nice fit there in Minnesota as potentially the third receiver and slot man for the Vikings. More shifty, smaller wide receiver. He's not going to score you a lot of touchdowns. Like we see here, only 3 in his 3 seasons with the Cardinals. But in PPR formats, I think Moore could be sneakily productive. Especially if McCarthy is starting under center, as kind of a safety valve, and underneath safety valve for him, Moore could be. And we know who all the attention is going to go to. So I don't think he'll have any trouble getting open underneath there. It makes for a pretty good wide receiving group there, potentially. It's already pretty good, but as a third receiver, Moore could have sneaky fantasy production. It's a good move by the Vikings. It's a good fit for Moore. And I think it helps J.J. McCarthy. What do y'all think? Moore to the Vikings is a good move? To me, it's pretty solid. Another move that would be good if it happens. The Athletic reports that wide receivers Stefon Diggs is meeting with the Patriots. Well, met with the Patriots, actually, yesterday. Could it be an impending signing? I think it would make a nice fit for Diggs. 31 years old. Thousand yards receiving for all the years he was at the Bills. All 4 of them previous to this. And then the Texans. Didn't really work out there as quite as well as we would have liked it to. But Diggs to the Patriots would give them a number 1 receiver, a valid number 1 receiver, one who has the experience to go along with the young, still rather green receivers they already have. on the roster. I think it'd be a good fit for Drake May, as Diggs can play underneath. Diggs really can play wherever you put him. But I think he makes for a reliable, short to intermediate receiver for Drake May. It'd be a good signing. It'd be a good for Diggs and his fantasy potential. It'd be good for May, having a veteran, savvy wide receiver who can still move as his go-to. Could be a match made in heaven. And of course, I couldn't get through the morning without talking about Aaron Rodgers. The saga continues. You know, we found out recently that the Vikings were not in on Aaron Rodgers, that they planned on sticking with J.J. McCarthy as their QB1 this offseason. No, they said they weren't considering Rodgers at this time. Maybe that's a tease too. At this time is a pretty loaded phrase. While they toy with his and our emotions, Adam Schefter reports that Rodgers is in no hurry to make a decision on which teams to play for in 2025. Oh, Cody Carpentier in the mix, in the room. Episode 700. Hell yeah, brother. Episode 700. It's kind of hard to believe. Well, I guess it's not, considering how long RosterWatch has been around. I've started to go gray, at least in my beard, a little bit. RosterWatch started over a decade ago, and maybe 15 years now. It's hard to believe that something that started as a hobby, something that was so much of a hobby, I didn't even use my real name when we started. I still don't use my name. That stuck. I was in grad school at the time, and I didn't want, you know, there to be a crossover. So I went by my fantasy handle, by the name that my fellow league mates gave me. If you've ever been curious, if you've been around long enough to wonder, Trash Man came about because of the way that I played fantasy, the way that I still play fantasy. Much to the chagrin of my league mates, I would find the trashiest players on the waiver wire in the perfect position, in the perfect game, the perfect matchup for them to explode for fantasy production. You know, and I did it enough times to where people started to give me the moniker the Trash Man, because I dig through the trash and find the treasure and use it to beat them. So, and that's the name that I chose when we started the show. We started out on ESPN radio too, the local ESPN radio station. We had to find advertisers to pay for the time so we could be on the radio show. We made our demo, and Alex and I were in a band together at the time. we were former musicians. I'm still a musician. I mean, we were both professional musicians for a number of years. Alex, I don't know if he plays at all now, but I still pick up gigs. But we were both professional touring musicians. And we started this with Byron, who some of you may know, and our friend Bruce. I digress. Congratulations to us. Why not? Thanks, Cody. And thanks, Terminal Scream. It means a lot that you're here. He adds, is Diggs a locker room concern for a young group? Or did Vrabel erase that possibility? I don't think he'll be a locker room concern because I think he's going to get everything that he wants. I think he'll be the undisputed number one receiver there. I think he's going to get his targets on a regular basis if he goes to the Patriots. I do not think it will be the fall of his discontent. I think he would be happy there as the top dog. You know, it'll be cold, but he's probably used to that from Minnesota and Buffalo, you know. So I don't think it'll be a problem whether Vrabel was there or not. But back to Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers could hang up his cleats this season, or at least that's what he's telling us. He's telling us he could take his toys and go home, which I think might actually be best for all parties involved. If he does not want to be a stopgap for a younger and experienced quarterback to make his transition to NFL starter, if he wants to be the guy, I don't think it works out for Aaron Rodgers or whoever he's playing for. I don't think he's good enough. I don't think he's still good enough at this point to be a long-term solution for anyone, or to not have the option, you know, to bench him. You know, if that's not if that's not on the table for whoever picks Rodgers up, then I don't see how this is going to work out, at least from a fantasy perspective. So let Rodgers hang up his cleats if that's what he's threatening. I think it's better for all parties if he does so. I mean, we'll miss him, and I'm sure he'll have a future comment, like being a commentator. You know, he can't do much worse than Tony Romo or Tom Brady. I'm still trying to decide if Brady is and has been a good TV presence. Pretty dry to me. But then he's not Tony Romo, who is kind of the opposite. Diarrhea of the mouth. And maybe about 33% of what he says is actually worth listening to. But yeah, I think Rodgers will be fine if he retires. I think we all will. More signings. The Browns signed wide receiver DeAndre Carter, formerly of the Bears, to a 1-year contract. Carter's been in the league for 7 years. His best season came in 2022, 538 yards and 3 touchdowns with the Chargers. I remember that season. He showed up in the garbage grab. Kick returner. It's a depth move. It does nothing for me in fantasy. Nothing that the Browns are doing and have done it in free agency. Moves the needle for me in fantasy thus far. Looks like a down year, a down season for the Browns, especially now that I know that Browns and free agent quarterback Carson Wentz have mutual interest, which is laughable. I mean, this is if the Browns don't get another veteran quarterback. They don't get Russell Wilson, perhaps. I mean, what if Rodgers went to the Browns? Oh, how the mighty will have fallen. But yeah, Carson Wentz as a Brown, and we're back to it's clown shoes, you know? We've gone a full 360 then, from the Browns being a laughing stock to actually being contenders to being a laughing stock again. I mean, it's not to say that they already kind of weren't with Deshaun Watson under center, but having Wentz there, ugh. At least his hair would match the uniforms. That's something to have going for him there. But yeah, Carson Wentz to the Browns. If it moved the needle at all for me for the Browns, it's in the wrong direction. It's not something I'd like to see happen. But I really don't know who else is out there. I mean, I guess you could get a Kirk Cousins, perhaps. The Falcons parted ways with him. I mean, he and Russell Wilson, and to some extent Aaron Rodgers, are the only other guys who I think would make sense there and be better, just better for the Browns. But it could happen. Wentz to the Browns. You hate to say it if you're a Browns fan. If you're a Browns enemy, then you love to say it. You go to sleep saying it instead of counting sheep. A few more NFL signings, free agency signings, and then I want to talk about some of these new proposed rules and rule changes. Joe Taylor says, trash man. No. What do you think about the rookie class? The rookie class of who? Like, are we talking just the rookie class in general? Are we talking about running backs? We're talking about tight ends, wide receivers, quarterbacks? What are we talking about, Joy? What I'm talking about right now are the Bears, who added some wide receiver depth by signing wide receiver Devin Duvernay, formerly the Jaguars. And then before that, the Ravens, to a 2-year, $12.5 million contract. Oh, no, he signed that that was the contract he signed with the Jags last season. Don't know the specifics of this contract just yet. We know that it's 1 year. Caught 11 passes for 79 yards in 2024, mainly used as a special teams player. And he'll probably do more of the same in Chicago. This is another signing that doesn't move the needle, but that's not surprising. I think we've seen the halcyon days of free agency this offseason. They're already the halcyon days. It's been a week, 2 weeks, and we've seen most of the major signings already happen. Duvernay is added to a laundry list of middling players behind Rome Odunze and DJ Moore for the Bears. But at least their offensive line looks like it's getting better. We can say that. We can say that. Another signing, Falcons signed tight end Philippe Franks, formerly the Panthers, was a former quarterback in the NFL. Started out as a quarterback with the Falcons, switched to tight end, as quarterbacks occasionally will do, on the practice squad. This is a special teams signing. Nothing to see here for fantasy. Before I got onto other things, I did want to talk about what the Texans have done for their offensive line, because that's the most glaring hole for the Texans as far as fantasy is concerned, as far as anything is concerned, really. You know, they let Laramie Tunsil go to the Commanders. Another great addition for the Commanders. Even though he's a little bit older. I think Laramie Tunsil's 31, but in lineman years, that's not that old. The Texans signed left tackle Cam Robinson, formerly the Vikings, a 1-year, $12 million contract. Was in Jacksonville before then, where he was pretty good. He's a pretty good tackle, blocker in Jacksonville. Didn't fare so well in Minnesota. But he gets another chance, another lease on life in Houston. Hopefully, it's a good fit. The Texans need offensive linemen more than anything else. They keep signing receivers. Like, how are you going to get it to the receivers if CJ Stroud can't stay on his feet? But this is a move in the right direction. Joy, his general thoughts on the rookie class. Overall, you know, and I think this is pretty much consensus with people who are interested in the draft and follow the draft. I mean, this is a strong year for running backs, strong year for tight ends, middling for receivers. Maybe I don't want to say the worst receiver class we've seen in a while, but definitely not the best or close to the best we've seen in years. We've had some banner years for wide receivers over the past few years. Not really the case in 2025, but I like that. I mean, I like that we can focus more on the running backs, the tight ends, potentially the quarterbacks. I mean, we have a few quarterbacks who could really, you know, potentially fit into that Jaden Daniels mold on a team. Favorite players of that group? At running back, you know, you have to like Austin Genty or Jonty. I'm gonna have to learn how to say his name properly. I mean, we're probably gonna be saying it a lot. Jonty. I'm just gonna say Jonty. I mean, because that's what he is. He's a Jonty. I mean, I think he's the most dynamic back in the draft. I don't know if he'll be the best for NFL football. I think he has the most upside potentially. I mean, I think he's could be the next Jahmyr Gibbs or the first Ashton Jonty. I like the tandem out of Ohio State, Henderson and Judkins. I mean, it'd be nice. It'd get them both on the same team, and it'd be like thunder and lightning. Henderson being the smaller, faster back, Judkins being the larger, but also pretty fast back. I think Judkins might be slightly undervalued. I think Judkins could potentially maybe have more value in the NFL. I think he has more touchdown upside than Henderson, perhaps. He's a bigger back, a bigger body, but he's still fast, still running in the 4.4s. I think you're potentially getting Judkins at value there. Everybody wants Henderson. But I think Judkins could make more of an impact at the next level. At wide receiver, you have to like my Texas boy. Hook 'em. Matthew Golden. I like Golden. I like Luther Burden. I like Isaiah Bond, another Texas boy, a wide receiver. A guy who I think a lot of people are sleeping on, Jimmy Horn out of Colorado. Smaller receiver, only 5'8", 171, but he was doing work at the Shrine Bowl practices. Also like Nick Nash out of San Jose State. Terminal Scream said, Bears double tap at picks 39-41. Oh, the OSU boys almost back to back. Could they do it? Would they do it? That'd be exciting for football. I think it'd be an improvement on what they have right now. That would be fun. Okay, so I'm not gonna. Well, let's talk about these potential rule changes real quick. So some of the ones that I think are more interesting potentially. Well, we have the tush push rule. The Packers don't want the tush push around. It's pretty effective. It has been for the Eagles. Cody adds that it would be brutal for Dynasty. I don't know what we're talking about. What are we talking about? Would be brutal for Dynasty. The OSU boys going to Chicago, or the tush push being prohibited? I could see it. I could see an argument for both. But it worked. It's worked out for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts so strong with his legs. You get some help from behind, and that's all she wrote, really. Thing is, as far as like short yardage, I mean, the Eagles, I think, were still only 4th in the league in like fourth down attempts. So it's not like they were number 1 or 2 or 3. They're in the top 5. But I see why the Packers wouldn't want that to continue. Cody says the Bears double tap. Yeah. I mean, that's a great idea, Terminal Scream. I think it could happen. I don't know if we've ever seen anything quite like that happen. Have we? At least not in recent years. So that was one proposed rule change. Others, illegal contact and defensive holding no longer resulting in automatic first downs. I like that. I mean, it gets harder and harder every season for defensive players. Just full stop. To actually play their positions. I think I'm for that. Did I said terminal scream, not terminal sarcasm. Sorry. I think I have like primal scream in my mind. You know, which wouldn't be strange for a psychology professor. Sorry about that terminal sarcasm. Try not to let it happen again. Other potential rule changes of note: overtime period being lengthened from 10 minutes to 15 minutes, with both teams guaranteed a possession, regardless of whether the first team scores a touchdown. So basically adding another period. 15 minutes. But both teams get to possess the ball. So it's just basically making the game longer, which in general is fine to me. But it feels like with this situation, with making it so that both teams could possess the balls and they get 15 minutes, it just makes the game longer, but doesn't, to me, add any potential certainty for a victor. To me, it just makes it more likely that we'll end up in a tie, which we don't want. Don't like that one so much. Another one of note, the last one of note, I think, playoff reseeding based on record rather than division winners. This one's interesting. Under this rule, the Vikings would have hosted a playoff game this season. The Rams would have been on the road. In the AFC, the Chargers versus Texans wildcard game would have been in LA instead of Houston. I've always thought it was kind of unfair that teams with better records would be seeded, would have worse seeds than teams who had crappy records, but still somehow managed to win their divisions. I think I'm 50-50 on this one. I could go either way. Hopefully, you don't go either way on Roster Watch. If you stuck with it this far, you haven't. Thanks for being with me this morning. Stick around for Cody and Alex. They'll be here in about 3 hours. Probably to talk about some of these rules more, potential rules more. But until then, this has been the Trash Man on behalf of RosterWatch.com. Until next time, be ready.
This is Anthony Richardson, and you're listening to Roster Watch.
This is AJ Brown, and you're listening to Roster Watch.
This is Josh